my wife up here. My wife Carol is with me. And we have one of our 18 grandchildren with us, Linda, who's a college student. But it is wonderful to see such a nice crowd come out and come to hear a politician speak.
Yeah!
I hope I'm different than the other politicians.
Oh, you
Because I want to tell you what's going on in this country and what we ought to do about it, because we have a few problems, and young people have a problem because you're inheriting a mess. And there's something that we can do about it. It's not all that difficult. I am convinced that we've got a mess in this country, basically because we have sent too many people to Washington that either can't read or didn't understand the Constitution. We want to make sure that we send nobody to Washington unless they can read and understand it. But we also have to believe them when they put their hand up and take an oath to obey the Constitution. If we'd had that for the last 40 or 50 years, our government would be very much smaller. For instance, take the condition of war. We haven't had a declared war since World War II. We were attacked, we declared war, fought the Germans, fought the Japanese, and it was a major ordeal in about less than 4 years. How long we've been in Afghanistan? Way too long! We've been going to war without declaration. We were in Korea and Vietnam and dozens of other places. Today, you might have read the news, we just put some troops in Australia. I don't know what we're doing. We don't need to have more troops spread around the world. We're already in 150 countries. We have 900 bases. I think if we have a military, which we should have, we should defend this country. We shouldn't be the policemen of the world. And we shouldn't be involved in nation buildings. Other nations might not want to live like we do, and they have a right and a privilege and a moral authority to do what they want, even when they make mistakes, because we do not have the facilities, the moral authority, nor the constitutional authority to go around the world and tell other people what they must do and how to run their country. On ourselves enough just trying to straighten out our own government, let alone trying to straighten out the governments around the world. So, but people argued the case, and they've argued this for many years. It's been going on since Woodrow Wilson. That is, America is an exceptional nation. And we have been. We have been a great nation, the freest nation ever, and the most prosperous, which we no longer are. But they said that we have exceptional values, and they're so exceptional and so wonderful that we have this obligation to spread our message around the world by force. That makes no sense. If we are an exceptional nation, and if we have those exceptional values, you cancel them all out when you decide on the principle of preemptive war. We have been following the position of preemptive war in the past 10 years. If we were more honest with ourselves, we'd call it aggression, and we don't believe in preemptive war, and we only fight defensive wars. These wars have been going on the last 10 years. We've added $4 trillion to our national debt, and a lot of that is falling on your shoulders because this is a burden. We are in the midst of an economic crisis. It's a debt crisis. And guess what they've been doing for the last 5 years since they've recognized there's a crisis? They made the misdiagnosis. They didn't know it was a debt crisis. They thought they needed more spending, and they're running up the debt even faster, and they think that's going to solve the problem. It will not. We need to shrink the size of government. We need to give the money and the authority and the power back to the people and let them spend their own money. On now for more than 50 years, and it's been very, very tragic for us. If you think of all the money and all the lives lost and all the injuries and penalties since World War II, because no war has been declared since World War II, I mean, it could add up into trillions and trillions of dollars. Just think, how much richer this country would be if we just take this simple position that only fight defensive war and don't go to war unless the people see to it that it's declared, and the Congress declares the war, not allow the presidents to go to war on their own. This was an important issue for the founders, and this is why they put it into the Constitution that the executive branch could not go to war without a declaration. They figured this would be important, but you know, not too long ago, the Secretary of Defense, Panetta, was before a committee, and they were asking him where he gets his authority, because he was planning another war. We've been involved in Egypt and Libya, and now we're getting ready, and we're already involved in Syria. They said, where do you get this authority? He says, well, from the United Nations. Treason! I wonder if anybody can discover which part of the Constitution that's in, let me know what it is, because it's not true. It's not true. They do not have this authority, and the United Nations can't make those decisions, and we shouldn't allow them. Matter of fact, the United Nations and the NATO charters explicitly say that this does not mean that you go to war without it going back to the U.S. Congress and the Congress making the decision. But nevertheless, they just go and they do these things, believing that it will be ignored. And it has been ignored for a long time. So much of what we have been doing, the spending, the money, the running up of the debt, the violations of civil liberties, and the involvement overseas, it's been ignored because we have been a super wealthy country. Yes. And all we have done, and so often, is we have way too much compromising in Washington. We have compromising between the right and the left, and the conservatives and liberals, and they come together and they agree to keep spending more money. I'll spend money on your projects, you spend money on my projects. And they've got away with this for a long time, and we kept re-electing the same people to the Congress who are spending all this money. But guess what? Something happened in the last few years, especially about 5 years ago. It's been discovered that we're broke. We're broke and there's nothing there. And therefore the arguments and the tenacity that they're fighting over this shrinking pie, a pie that's practically gone, is never ending. They can't solve the problem because all they're going to do is fight over it. They will not entertain the thought that maybe
more
government
for
is out of control.
everyone.
Maybe we need to rein in the government and allow the people to keep the fruits of their labor and not have to turn it over to the government. It's never been hard for me to come to that conclusion, because I believe rights don't come from our government. Our rights come from us, either from a creator or in a natural way. So if we have our lives as a gift to us, and we have our liberties as a gift, why wouldn't it be natural to think that if it's our life and our own liberty, why shouldn't we be able to keep the fruits of our labor?
That's right.
Which means that if we weren't fighting all these wars and we didn't have the runaway entitlement system, guess what? We wouldn't have an income tax. We'd go back to the old days and repeal the 16th Amendment. And we didn't have it. Obviously, the founders did not give us the income tax. The income tax came in 1913. Of course, along with another little system that they invented in 1913. And I know you have never heard of it. But they came up with this Federal Reserve System. What in thunder is that all about? You know, that sounds like a very good idea. Let's do that. We'll celebrate. We'll celebrate next year after we win the election, of course. System by repealing the Federal Reserve. But the very least that we have to do is get an audit of the Fed, find out what they're doing. You know, Congress spends a lot of money. They're up into the trillions, but most of the time it's just meager hundreds of billions. But the Fed is involved in many, many trillions of dollars. They were involved with churning $15 trillion in the bailout. Of course, it was to help the people, help the people that were losing their mortgages, because they had this incentive to always make sure everybody had a free house and qualified for a mortgage. Of course, during that time, who was making all the money? Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and executives of big banks and Goldman Sachs. When the crisis hit, those who were going to get hurt, they kept screaming to the Republicans and the Democrats, and they said, hey, there's going to be a depression, come and bail us out, we're too big to fail. And guess what? The Congress did, as well as the Federal Reserve. They bailed out those who made a lot of money during the financial time when there was a financial bubble. And guess what? Those programs were designed to help the people and help the middle class and help the poor. They lost their jobs and they lost their houses. So it doesn't work. And this is what people are starting to realize. Not only is the Treasury bare, but the entitlement system doesn't work. And spreading our goodness around the world doesn't work. So now we have a system that is destined to change. The big question before us is, what's it going to change to? Are we going to accept more authoritarianism and tyranny, or are we going to accept the cause of liberty and return those freedoms to the American people? And it is the cause of liberty that we must address, and understanding where our liberty comes from is so important. The wonderful thing about liberty and the understanding of freedom is it will bring us together. The interventionist system, the big government, the bureaucratic system, the redistribution of wealth by the special interests, that divides us, especially when we run out of money. But if you think about what freedom is all about, it isn't judgmental. It doesn't come along and say, well, we want our freedoms because we want to impose on people certain things. We want our freedoms to allow people to have their own life and their own lifestyles and their own private practices. That's their business. So everybody's going to have different desires and what they want from their personal freedom.